Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
Broadcasting live from the dark and cold dungeons deep beneath the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Prepare yourselves to be taken away into another dimension as we now have control over your thoughts, fears, and perspective of the unexplained world you dare not speak of. With your hosts, Lindsay Knight and Michael Knight. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the gates to the paranormal and beyond.
Broadcasting live from the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the Paranormal and Beyond. Do you believe in alien abduction, or better yet, do you believe that governments around the world suppress the existence of extraterrestrial life and alien contact within our society? In a moment, James Carman, director and producer of the film The Hidden Hand, Alien Contact, and the Government Cover-Up, will be joining us live on the program to discuss his film, as well as the ongoing journey to expose the truth about alien contact altogether. So get ready as we go into The Hidden Hand with James Carman when we return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
Your ticket to the unknown is at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. Knights with a K, ParanormalResearchSociety.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com, you're going to believe. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by Knights Paranormal Research Society.com. This is the Paranormal and Beyond, and it's your show. Call us at 731-1230. Here again, Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight.
Welcome back to another brand new and out-of-this-world edition of the Paranormal and Beyond. But first, be sure to check us out at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com, where you can link up to all the past shows by simply clicking on that archive link above. That's KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. Ever want to be an actor? Well, start acting today by logging on to HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Again, that's HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. KLAV1230am.com. Special shout out to all those listening online through the KLAV1230am.com website and all those driving around in the Vegas Valley listening to us on your stereos. We love you and thank you very much. I'm Michael Knight, your radio evangelist. Alongside of me is Lindsay Knight, the Princess of the Dark. How are you doing, Lindsay?
I'm always doing well. How are you doing, Mike?
I am doing absolutely fabulous. Today we got a great show as we're going to have James Carman on the show. James Carman, on the show in a moment. But first, let's get into the news.
Topping the news on the paranormal and beyond, society has long dreamed of possessing superhuman powers like those wielded by the characters we see in comics and movies. Abilities that would seem to be rooted firmly in the realms of science fiction. But can we actually gain the superhuman senses of superheroes? Well, what if it can be a reality? Some scientists believe that a future in which it will be possible to possess such powers is closer than we think. Researchers have been investigating the way in which the brain processes information from our existing senses and whether this could be used to handle new types of inputs. The brain doesn't care what the peripheral devices are that you plug in, like eyes and ears and nose and mouth. These are plug-and-play peripheral devices, and the brain will figure out how to use it. It should be theoretically possible to integrate new types of senses into the brain, providing humans with new perceptions like the ability to sense magnetic fields, the ability to see in ultraviolet, also a better sense of smell, and much more. In related news, the U.S. military is building a real-life Iron Man suit. Tony Stark's sophisticated robot suit may soon be more than just a subject of movies and comics. U.S. Special Operations Command Chief William McCraden has put forward plans to develop a unique form of combat armor that would turn the tide in any battle. Referred to as a Tactical Assault Light Operator Suit, or TALUS, based on special type of material that can switch between solid and liquid, which when exposed to an electrical current, the armor would provide lightweight but effective protection against bullets. A climate control system would keep the wearer comfortable in any temperature, while night vision and an oxygen supply would enable effectiveness in any circumstance. Other features would include health and power monitoring, with the ability for first aid to be administered to wounded soldiers through the use of a special foam that would be sprayed directly to the wounds to stop bleeding. Reporting the news for the Paranormal and Beyond, I'm Lindsay.
All right, would you be a superhuman?
Absolutely. I've been thinking about it for a while. After I just watched Iron Man 3 again tonight, and I was wondering, my goodness, what if I had some kind of special ability?
Well, here's some news for you. I already am.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's get into our show. Our special guest, James Carman, is a longtime paranormal researcher and investigator. He lives and works as a cinematographer and as a producer, recently winning an EBE award for Best Documentary for his film entitled The Hidden Hand, Alien Contact, and the Government Coverup, which is a controversial award-winning documentary that explores and looks at the possibility of an ET presence here on Earth. Currently, he is working on a new film entitled Superconscious. The Paranormal Beyond would like to welcome to the program James Carman. How you doing, James?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am great. I love the topic of alien contact and especially documentaries. I talked to you earlier, and I'm sure you went through a lot of research before producing this film.
I did. Years and years of research. And there's so many different angles to the whole phenomenon. It's very vast, and there's so much information out there. So it really takes quite a while to get up to speed, I'd say.
Well, James, how exactly did you get into, this research with aliens? I mean, something must have drove you, to decide to document, and make a film about aliens.
Well, I've always been interested in the paranormal all of my life, and I lived in Europe for quite a long time, and when I came back here, I was producing some healing DVDs, and so I would be shooting these groups in New Jersey, and when we would take breaks, there would be women that would be kind of huddled in the corner, and they would be crying, and I would hear them kind of like talking about their babies, and then I didn't really get it, and then they was talking about their hybrid babies and kind of their pregnancies being terminated before they came to full term. And so that piqued my interest. And then I also met some people who were involved with the Montauk project. And they were saying that basically they'd been trained as psychics all of their life, or been brought up to be in this kind of secret government system. And that I also found that fascinating. And so then I started making a film. First I started with Al Bielek. Do you know him?
Yes.
Yeah. And then after a while, I started out, as a cinematographer, I shot quite a lot of films that were, narrative films. And so I thought I would kind of make it more like a narrative film. And so I shot some scenes with him and Gloria Hawker, who is an abductee in New Mexico. And they look beautiful. They're wonderful. But then when I was adding that with kind of more normal documentary material, I found that people didn't really get the narrative part too much, because they couldn't always make a distinction. Is that like, are you telling a story here, or are you telling facts? And so I had to drop that part of the film, and then I just made a kind of a straighter documentary film.
As a paranormal researcher, before you got into this film, did you believe in such things as aliens, abductions, or extraterrestrials altogether?
Well, I didn't know very much about alien abduction, to tell you the truth. I guess the first time I ever had anything to do with it, I read Communion, and that was just, my God, that was harrowing. And the hair on my neck would come up, and I really felt that there was truth in that, and that it was a true story. And that was in the 90s at some point, and then I kind of let that to rest, and then it kind of came back later on. And I'd always believed that there were extraterrestrial life on other planets, but I never thought about it too much here. It didn't come into my purview in my day-to-day existence. And then slowly, it's kind of like once you become interested and you look at it and you see that there is something going on, then it's kind of hard to put it down, because there's so much that import that it has in terms of, what we've been told and how that's really not true.
Well, this being you doing this documentary and now pushing forward with, the whole concept about aliens and, the unknown, like the mysteries behind it. And the fact that you segued from, the healing part, did you get a lot of slack because you were about to do a documentary on something so different from what you were doing in the past?
Yeah. Like I would go back to Germany and they would say, "Oh, what are you working on?" And I would tell them, and they would just look at me like I was crazy, and they said, "You are going to be totally ridiculed when you make that film." And, in some ways I have been, but in some ways it seems like there's there's more openness now. And it's also kind of like you used to just get like the ridicule angle and people, "Oh, that's crazy." And now, not with everyone, but some people look at you and it's kind of like, "Oh my God, am I really going to have to take this seriously?"
Exactly.
You're starting to get that now. And
Exactly.
That's funny. It's like, "Oh no, I have to really deal with this subject. I don't want to deal with it."
It's funny how people don't want to talk about it, but then they want to listen.
Well, before it used to be taboo to talk about things like this, ghosts and so forth. But now people's minds are opening to the possibility of even a cover-up all over the place. Everything's now a cover-up or a conspiracy. When did you start tying in the government with the aliens?
Well, let's just say I always felt that I'd been reading, even since I was very, very young, I was very attuned to the news. And then I would just watch historically how things were presented in terms of how, big corporations would, engage in criminal activity, and then it would basically get whitewashed and people would forget about it. And so I was always aware that there was kind of a deep corruption underneath the patina of our democratic society. And so as I went deeper into the UFO alien phenomenon, then it's hard not to look at the government side of things, because it's for me it's implausible that they would not be interested in interacting on that level, because it is such an important aspect, in terms of national security, in terms of technology, in terms of energy and science, possible cultures, and just basically understanding the nature of reality. It's not something you could just say, okay, well, we don't know with it, but we're too worried about the budget to deal with that.
Absolutely. During your film, you interviewed a lot of hard-hitting people in UFO movement, as like Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut. I'm sure that was mind-blowing to hear testimony from him.
Yeah, I mean, he was really great. I mean, he's very gracious, and he's, I don't know if you know, he was the 6th astronaut on the moon. He has 2 PhDs from MIT. He's a Navy captain. He's a decorated war hero. I mean, he's just incredible. And so he said that when he came back from the moon, he was a hero, really. And since he grew up in Roswell, when he returned, that the old-timers came and visited him, and they wanted to tell him the story about Roswell and the crash, because they didn't want that this whole story would get lost. And so they all came to him and they said, yes, there was a crash, and some of them said that they had seen bodies. And so he just kind of collected this information, and then he went to some contacts of his in the Pentagon, and it was corroborated, and that's kind of where he started on his journey. And I think also he he had a big experience, a spiritual awakening when he was coming back to Earth. And it was called the Samadhi experience, and where he would see the sun, and then he would see the Earth, and then he would see the moon and the stars, and he would realize that his body, the molecules and atoms in his bodies, were once part of an ancient star, and that everything is connected. And so he really, became a leader in terms of what you could call paranormal science. In terms of, he started this scientific organization called IONS, which investigates kind of like human potential and special gifts and abilities.
James, we got a caller for you. We got Mark on the line. Mark, you're live on the program.
Hey, Michael, Lindsay, how's it going? And I take it you're talking about the hidden hand and possibly extraterrestrials living amongst us?
Absolutely.
Is that what Well, Michael, Lindsay, I mean, well, forgive me. I mean, I hate to sound like a downer and maybe sound as a skeptic. Could come off as a skeptic to your host. Extraterrestrial, I'm not too sure about, but maybe interdimensional, such as the demons and such. Aleister Crowley talking about the ascended masters and such. For that part, I mean, I don't want to sound like a skeptic and throw a monkey wrench into the plans, but I'd also take a look, at a possible false flag. As I've talked about in previous programs, like a fake alien invasion and such.
Well,
that also be a factor?
Hold it right there, Mark. Stay on the line. James, didn't you have you had some sort of correlations with the demon factor as well, right?
Well, I think, obviously Mark, you bring up good points. It is a vernacular, what we call UFOs or the negative ETs could be related to demons from the past. It's just a kind of a different nomenclature that we're using, and it might be very much the same phenomenon. And obviously there is an interdimensional aspect that's very true, and it could be like there's a physical aspect in terms of physical ETs and also interdimensional ETs or beings and whatever you want to call them. But I think it's clear that they have been interacting with us since humanity's been around, and they are still continuing to do that to this day. But it's kind of hard. You have to see that there is hard physical evidence. The UFOs are real. We measure them with every censoring system that we have. They leave soil residue. So it's a real phenomenon. It's not only interdimensional. So I think we have to be clear that it's a very complicated phenomenon, and we might not know everything about it right away. It has to be studied more in depth, I think.
Mark.
Okay, because and Michael Lindsay.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Well, Michael Lindsay, I guess my point is what I'm showing some concern about, because also remember other false flag operations, a possible EMP attack on us to shake things up, or is a fake alien invasion, and let us not also forget Project Bluebeam to try and project holographic images, up in the sky, and show images of say Christ or Mohammed, and cause people to lose faith in the religion and just welcome in Anno Lucius, the age of Lucifer and such.
I think there are psyops and different disinformation involved in all this. That's very true, and Vanna von Braun said that they were setting things up to where our new enemy would be ETs, or it would be construed as ETs, not that they were our enemies. And if you look at all the development that we have in space in terms of space weaponry, there actually it might be that we have built all this weaponry because we are defending ourselves from someone or something. So it's hard to tell for sure, but I think it is very clear that there is a certain amount of deception and misinformation going on.
Oh yes, I mean, sir, and I've also mentioned to Michael Lindsay in previous programs, follow the money of the global elite, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. He who controls the gold makes the rules, and my concern is, just look at the people who are really behind the scenes, the shadow government and such. I mean, as all of us, we want to look towards our leaders through our quote unquote free elections and such. As dare as I say this, look who's pulling the strings. Look at the man. Don't be afraid to look at the man behind the curtain, and see what's really going down here. It's just the age of deception, and I just want people to wake up and see, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I mean, I guess the best example I could put is, if any of you can remember a film back in the 1980s starring Rowdy Piper, made by John Carpenter, titled They Live. You put on the sunglasses, it's like, oh my good grief, what have I stumbled across here and such?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I mean, obviously the powers that be, the power behind the politicians that are making decisions for them, they have an enormous influence in the world, but you can't assume that they know everything and that they're running everything. You have to remember that ET is not giving us any kind of information usually. Everyone who has contact, most people have contact except some positive contactees, they have their memories wiped or they're mind controlled to where they have screen memories. So it's just a very gray area, and it's hard to say, but I don't think we can assume that the global elite, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, that they know everything and that they're pulling all the strings. It can be that they're also maybe fighting for their life, so to speak.
Well, thanks for your call, Mark. Now, speaking about the government, in your research, because you've interviewed a lot of respectable people in NASA and so forth, as well as doctors who study this phenomena in ET, did they kind of blow the whistle on that type of subject of, like you've talked about, secret shadow governments who are involved and possibly working with ETs today?
Yes, I mean, there's quite a few people that talk about that. Clifford Stone talks about that. Lyn Buchanan talks about that. Burrish talks about that. Niara Isley talks about that. Let me see, who else do I have in my film? Paul Hellyer. He says was a former defense minister from Canada. He says that that the UFOs and the ETs exist, and that there is very much of a national security concern and interaction with the phenomenon. So it just depends on who you talk to as to how much of an interaction there is. Colonel John Alexander says the government is so overwhelmed and so busy that it can't even be concerned with that, because it's not set up for that. But I think you have to make a distinction between the government and the secret government. That's kind of how I look at it.
Talking to numerous people and a lot of people in the higher ups, what have they told you as far as how many different types of aliens there are?
Well, there's people have talked that there's a handbook, and in the 50s the handbook had like 53 races, and then in the 80s it was 110, and then now I don't know what it is. I mean, Lyn Buchanan interacted with 3 different kinds, and that was when he was working in intelligence for the military, and they basically wanted to see if he would work as an interfacer. That means someone who can telepathically communicate with these beings, and he said he didn't want to do it, although he could interface, but he just didn't want to have to do that every day, because the more you get into that ultra secret life, then the less of a life you have. And I think Clifford talked about to a few different ones. He communicated with a few different ones. So, I mean, I can't say that I know for sure, because everyone says something a little different, but I think it's quite a few.
Well, as far as on that subject, is there some sort of hierarchy that you've discovered interviewing all these people as far when it comes to the species of aliens?
Well, I could say what people say. I can't say I know for sure. I mean, some people say that the winged reptilians are of the highest hierarchy, and some people say, it would be the light beings that are kind of more spiritually advanced that are also kind of looking at us, or maybe there's even kind of an age-old war that plays out, and humanity is part of the playing field, and in some ways I think that makes sense. Then of course the Greys are very powerful. What they call the praying mantis, or usually they're supposedly the leaders of the Greys, and they're very intelligent and quite powerful. And you hear also of blondes and Nordics being very powerful. And I don't think you can say exactly these are, it'd be like saying, okay, who's the hierarchy here, the French or the Spanish, or do you know what I mean? It can be just
Absolutely.
Like if you're from different nations or species, you might not say one is more hierarchical than another. I mean, who would be more hierarchical, a giraffe or a lion? I mean, lions don't eat giraffes, and giraffes aren't interested in lions. So it might be that they have to share the same terrain, but there's not that much of a interaction.
Well, we know now, absolutely, the human race is not on top of the food chain.
Right.
So, that's a scary thought right there. Because, our investigation as well, talking with a lot of people and finding out that there's these other races and, compartmentalized governments that work with different races, not just one. It's a very scary thought, and coming up with the theory that basically our government really has no control over these beings.
Well, I'm sure they don't. I mean, that must be pretty scary for them. You can imagine that position. That's exactly what I was talking to Mark. I mean, if you're a member of the global elite, the Olympians, and you know that there's this interaction and this interface going on, but it's like you don't really have a handle on it. And you know that all of your people could be being spied on, like we spy on people, and infiltrated. I mean, that's a very scary thought, to think that even your generals and your agents might not have mental and spiritual sovereignty. That's a scary idea.
I want to go into your interviews. I don't want to give a lot away because I want people to go out there and get this movie and see it for themselves. What was your feeling when you've talked to these individuals? Because you know, as a paranormal investigator, you got to have credence when you talk to somebody, because you got to hear truth and reason in their voice to believe him. Did a lot of them was very compelling? I mean, I bet the stories were different, but there were a lot of similarities in them. How was your taking and all your interviews combined probably into one?
Well, you know, when I interview someone, you know, I hardly interviewed anyone where I thought that they were doing it for their own self-aggrandizement. Then I would walk away immediately. I'm not interested in that at all. And some people would seem more even-keeled than others, and some were very passionate. And it's interesting because I didn't. For me, that's fine for people to be passionate because it's something very traumatic that a lot of people go through, or it's mind-blowing and transformational. So I think you have to see what or imagine if you had these kind of contacts, either positive or negative, you know, all of your life, because most of the time this happens from childhood into old age, how that would affect your personality. And especially, let's say if you were taken as a child and you were taken away from your parents, you didn't know if you would ever be brought back. You know, it's obviously very scary, and then your memories were wiped. And this was done repeatedly. Obviously, subconsciously, there would be some kind of stress and trauma, or post-traumatic stress, shell shock, whatever. And so sometimes I look for that in people when I'm talking to them, to see if there's something there, and oftentimes there is.
James, speaking to a lot of these people who have been abducted, have they told you, because we've spoken to some too, and they said, you know, in the physical aspect that they've had something implanted in them. Did you get that concept from them as well?
Yeah. Usually they say that they've been implanted, and it has to do with either a tracking device or it has to do with controlling them, you know, in terms of implanting thoughts in their minds, or it has to do with healing or evaluating how their body system is functioning. It's like that.
And I would,
you know, I mean, we've done a lot. You know, I think there's been some research done on it. There could be more. I mean, there's the whole idea. Then you have these physical implants, and then you have the whole idea of etheric implants. I'm sure you've heard of that too, correct?
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's, if you have then sensitives who can see the energy fields, then they can see disturbances in the energy fields and things that have been placed in the energy fields, in the energy bodies that don't belong there. And you see it's kind of an etheric technology. So you have that aspect of the implants also.
Did some of these abductees also have experiences with government abductions?
Yeah, many of them did. So, I mean, you know, for this is one idea about that the people who interact with ET, that they're chosen for special purposes, and you know, we don't know exactly what all of them are. They might be genetic, they might be psi or psychic abilities, and but in any case, most of the communication is telepathic. And so you can't train everyone to be telepathic, or maybe you can now. I mean, I was listening to what you were talking about, you know, the super soldiers and then creating the exoskeleton suits and that kind of stuff. And, you know, obviously we've advanced quite a bit.
It's funny because I was just talking about the news, and we're talking about superhuman powers that they're now coming up with this armor suit. I'm like, my goodness, where are they getting this from?
Right. And you know, they have synthetic telepathy now in terms of, like, you know, machines can, you know, communicate with people and read people's minds. You know, that's very much happening right now. And so I think I'm sorry, what was the question now? Because we diverted.
Oh, I'm lost. I'm lost in you.
Well, let me ask you this question, James. So this movie, this Hidden Hand, because it was amazing, and you got a lot of awards for it. And, I commend you for putting this movie out because
putting the effort.
Oh, absolutely, because a lot of people, they want to do this, but something like this, but they're too afraid to to even talk about it because again it was taboo. Where now it's people are more they're talking about it now. But I commend you for actually having the ability and the courage to do this. But behind this movie, what have you gotten from it as far as like what did you take back from this, like putting this out? Is this like more for letting people be aware, or just the people that you've talked to, are they do they feel more of a sense of comfort?
Basically, what is the echo effect that has been produced since this film has been out there?
Well, first of all, I did it because I felt it was important to educate and let people know. And I was thinking I would just be doing my part. And it's quite interesting because I learned quite a bit and I know quite a lot, but I feel like I don't really have a total grasp of the whole thing. There's something eluding me, and so I think, well, maybe I'll make a second film and I'll figure it out then. But that's just the nature of life, and our state of evolution. We're always evolving, and we always going to evolve, and so you want that's a continuous learning process. And so for me, that was I wanted to share that learning process with other people who are interested in, because I think it's very important. Obviously, with the whole idea of like we were taught that we're the smartest and the best, and we control the earth. And when you take that away from us, it's a much scarier proposition, and then you have to rethink a lot of things. And one of the things you have to rethink is how you act day to day. How do you treat people? How do you treat animals? How do you treat the earth? Because it's not like we're the only ones that are doing the treating now. It's also reciprocal. People are doing unto us. So then you have to think, well, how have we been doing unto everyone around us? So I think that's quite interesting, that dynamic.
Wow. So let's get into your film itself and give us a synopsis and take us through, without divulging too much, because I want the listeners to go out there and watch it for themselves, about take us just through it, give an idea.
Well, for me, it was it's an overview of, the UFO ET phenomenon. It it's a kind of a blow by blow, and obviously there's many things I left out because you can't put everything in a movie. And I could have made it started off, it was like 2.5 hours long, and then I shortened it to 80 minutes because I think there's only so much you can digest at one time. And so first off, I start off in saying, well, I have very reputable people saying this is true, this is real, and then I go into people's first experiences, and then I kind of go into abduction and what that's involved, and then I go into the military involvement in black budget projects and reverse engineering, and then I go into like implants and what that is, and I go into the different types of ETs that are commonly spoken of. I mean, not all of them, but just the ones that most people speak of. And then I go into like sexual experimentation. People talk about being experimented on sexually in terms of their sperm and ova being taken. And then I talk about it being a generational issue. It's not like you just get picked out of the sea because you've got red hair. It's because your mother or your father was involved in that, and because their grandmother or their grandfather was involved in that. And so there's a kind of a lineage in a program of being taken or contacted that's important. So it's a program that has a lot of depth, and it obviously has a lot of importance to the ETs. Otherwise, they wouldn't put all this infrastructure in it to support it. Can you imagine if you talk about like a contact or an abduction scenario where people are being taken on a regular basis? Can you imagine everything that has to be built to support that? All the experimentation, all the craft, like the scout crafts, the mother crafts, sustaining the beings that are there. It's mind-boggling. If we were to think as a civilization, if we were to do something like that, it would be a huge undertaking. Actually, we probably have never done anything that big together as a species. So for them, it's very important, and that they keep it secret and don't let us know what's going on, because they're wiping the memories of the people that they contact with. Then I think it has tremendous import.
Well, more or less, it'd be very, very hard to comprehend for an individual and just mess up their mind in the process. Also, within your film, you talk about human and alien hybridization and intermingling. Let's get into that a little bit.
Okay, well, that kind of gets back to when I started, and I was hearing these women, and they were really traumatized. They would be crying in these healing classes, and they're trying to figure things out. They're confused. They would be pregnant in before 3 months came. The next day it would be gone. Maybe they would go to the doctor and they'd say they were going to get aborted, and the night before, the baby would be taken mysteriously or gone mysteriously, and so many of these male and females, they reported that their sperm and ova were taken, and then later at another time that they were brought on UFO craft, or that they were brought into underground bases, and that there were hybrids there, and that it was their job to interact with them, to give them love, because the ETs didn't seem very capable of providing that emotional support that any child needs. And then beyond that, they were to give them some kind of education of what it means to be a human and how humans interact. Because, if you don't grow up around that, you don't learn that. So, that for me was one of the main reasons I did the film, because besides being not the top dog, in the food chain, it's like, or even the idea of our humanness. If you think like, okay, that we have just this innate love for the species. I do, anyways. And then when you think about the idea that people are just taking us and remolding us in their design, however they want to do it, I think it's frightening, and it's concerning. So that's one of the main things that interested me in making the film.
Well, in relation to what you were just saying, what is your take on Zecharia Sitchin about the Sumerian text and that whole story? Do you put credence in that we are already a hybrid?
Yes, very much so. I think, and in my film, I did interview many people about the ancient history and what all that could mean. I just didn't have enough room to put it in. So when I do make my next version of The Hidden Hand, then I will put that chapter in. But absolutely, I think that we were created from a hominid, primate from this earth, and then mixed with ET genetics from the gods that descended down. And if you look at the mythology and the histories of every major culture around the world, they say the same thing, basically. So I think there's very much credence in that idea, and it's very, very compelling to me. And it's also one of the things I think about the most is like, where did they go? Because it's when you read those tablets, they talk about actually living in those cities with the gods would be up on the pyramids, and then the demigods, which were more human and than the pure aliens, they would be the kings, and they would be leading the more humans like how we are now. And there would be you would have robots walking around controlling things. There was technology there. There was radio communication. There was super weapons. There was all kinds of stuff, and this all came to an end with the flood, I imagine. And so I always wondered, like, why did they leave, or why did they stop having such a strong presence here on Earth. And so I think that hasn't been properly answered, but it's an intriguing question.
Well, I have the idea that history, like technology today, this is not news to us. It's new to us, but not to the Earth. I mean, we go through this cycle, and it's going far back in way past biblical times. There's absolutely a footprint that shows that we, Darwin's whole theory, it blows it out the water, especially going back to the Sumerian text, which is the oldest, by far living text discovered, is basically a blueprint of our whole history.
And we can't see, and for myself, I can't say, when I talk to other people, we talk about belief systems and religions, and you really can't, you really don't want to talk about religions with other people because, everybody wants to argue their own beliefs. But, for myself, it has opened up, a whole new door for myself. Whenever I think back about the Sumerians, and you can't discount those texts because they're actually, fact.
They're actually written in
stone. They were written in stone, so it's like, how do you discount something like that? Absolutely,
Yeah, I mean, I think they're amazing. I mean, obviously, they had technology that was more advanced than what we have right now, and it was different. And I think we're coming to the point where we're learning how they set things up. I mean, I think they had a worldwide grid, power grid, that was very much involved in, I don't know, probably many different things that we can't do, but one of it was building huge monuments with sound technology. I mean, they weren't actually moving these stones. They were cutting them and lifting them and placing them with sound technology.
Okay, you've been a paranormal researcher for a while. You got into the whole UFO ET phenomena. How many doors has this opened in your mind? Because, like I said, you made a film, but it was first 2 hours. There's just so much to talk about. When you interview one abductee, you have a story that's totally different and mind-blowing, and then you interview another one, it's like it supersedes that one, and there's just so many outlets to go.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to keep you busy for a while.
No, well, the thing is, it's unending, and then it gets more like, well, what do you want to concentrate on? What area do you want to concentrate on? And kind of the area I'm concentrating on now is how I ended the film, and I ended the film in a chapter. It's called Galactic Consciousness, and it's talking about physically and spiritually how we're developing, how we're evolving, and obviously we're going out into space in a big way, and then we're developing in a big way in terms of with computing and artificial intelligence. Soon we're going to have computers that are more intelligent than we are. Soon we're going to be able to be connected with the whole internet all the time via technology that's implanted in our biology, and we're going to be able to genetically change our biology however we want. And this is kind of getting back to what you guys were talking about at the beginning, the super soldier technology. It's just going to explode, and so that's pretty amazing, because then it's not going to be humanity anymore either. It's not going to be like us. It's going to be like, it'll be a hive mind. People will be incredibly connected. You won't have to study anymore. You'll download things. Can you imagine? You don't have to study calculus anymore. You just download it. It would be fun.
Well, I don't know if you've read the news, but they just came out with the first bionic man.
No, I didn't.
Last week they actually just announced that they just came out with the first bionic man.
James, do you think a lot of this technology that's coming out is reverse engineered?
Yes, and I think what we're hearing about is just a fraction of really what's there and what's available. What we hear about is it's usually at least 40 years behind what's actually being used. It could be actually many more years than that behind what the secret elites have access to and are using. So, I mean, what they're telling you about, like, how it will be, that's already how it is in some way. That's the way I think of it. A lot of times when I look at sci-fi movies, I look at them because I think a lot of the stuff that they put in there is actually kind of a news report, like you guys just gave, about, like, what's really going on.
Basically, yeah, there is evidence of Hollywood that leaks out what's to come. If you really pay attention to the movie, you can see the subliminal message in there, and especially the movies coming out. Like, remember the cartoon The Jetsons? People didn't believe the stuff, and they thought that was so futuristic. And today, there's a lot of stuff in there that has come to fruition in our day-to-day life today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels so great to be living in the future, doesn't it?
Right.
It's wonderful.
That's why I say I'm so glad I was born in this era.
Yeah, but the question is, how far are we living in the future?
Right.
Or how far back are we being suppressed to believe that we are living in a technological advanced world? That your film talks about, that the government covers up. And that's, it gets back to, like, we really don't know, as far as us that's not in the need to know basis, on what's really going on. And to talk about alien and ET life, there's so many avenues to go down because we don't really have a finger on it.
Right, but I think, it's slowly coming out. I mean, in some levels there is disclosure. And, I mean, we had in 2000, we had Dr. Greer, going before the press club in Washington and presenting all those people. And then we've had, 20 or maybe even more countries coming forth and giving some of their UFO documents. And so there is some kind of disclosure going on. It seems very measured. And then, eventually, like if we talked about how the human interacting with the singularity in terms of artificial intelligence being smarter than we are, at some point this information is going to be available, or it'll be figured out. There'll be just too much knowledge to keep it shut. And so I think they would rather have it come out slowly, because it's much easier to deal with when it's a slow natural evolution, and it seems like it was natural progression.
Do you think humanity will get to what I think is the ultimate level of ascension, is in being one collective mind, basically?
Well, I think we already are, really. Jung talks about that. That we're all connected, and there's a very kind of the collective unconsciousness, and I mean we're not aware of that, and the mystics talk about, and like Edgar Mitchell talked about, when he was in this state of samadhi, when he was coming back to the earth, he felt that he was interconnected with everything. He was a part of everything. So in a way, we already are like that, but none of us know it. And so I think that possibility will be more and more open for all of us. But if you do it in a technological way, I think there's more room for being controlled. It's just like, what you have access to, what kind of knowledge, what kind of technology that will make you, it's kind of just like, what can you afford? How much of a superhuman can you be? A lot of it has to do with how much power you have and influence, and how much money.
Absolutely.
And so the world could become even a lot more unequal than it is now.
Absolutely. Your film is very compelling. Where can people go get it to watch it? And your website as well, for people to reach you.
Okay, well, the website is hiddenhandthemovie.com, and it's listed all the places where they could buy it, and it's iTunes, Vudu, Amazon, Xbox, Mio, and Google Play. Now, it was for the last week. It was one of the top 5 selling documentaries on Google Play, which is amazing, and they're going to have a special Halloween special for selling it this week.
All right, James Carman, we'd like to thank you for being on the program, and when you come out with your part 2, we would like to have you back.
Oh, thank you so much.
James, thank you so much for coming on the program.
All right.
Okay.
Everybody out there, have a safe weekend. Remember, Friday, November 1st, we have Stan Friedman, and we're going to get into Roswell very deep, like you've never heard it before. And that's all coming up next week on the Paranormal and Beyond. Everybody have a good weekend and stay safe. Goodbye, everybody.